Legal disclaimer. Fair use notice. This video may contain copyrighted material, the use of which has not always been specifically authorized by the copyright owner. We are making such material available in an effort to advance understanding of historical, political, human rights, and economic issues. We believe this constitutes a fair use of any such copyrighted material as provided for in Section 107 of the U.S. Copyright Act. In accordance with Title 17 U.S.C. Section 107, the material on this channel is distributed without profit to those who have expressed a prior interest in receiving the included information for research and educational purposes. Welcome to Earth, or more specifically, welcome to the United States, Incorporated. Please note that by taking your first breath, you have automatically agreed to their terms and conditions. Did you read them? Of course not. You were a baby. But don't worry, we signed them for you. You think you're a citizen of a country? That's adorable. You are an asset in a bankruptcy proceeding that started before your grandfather was born. Let me give you the real orientation. The founding employee, George Washington. Let's start with the founder. We're told George Washington was a freedom fighter battling for liberty. Let's check his resume. Before he was a general, George was a surveyor. Who did he work for? The Ohio Company and the Fairfax Proprietary. These were massive real estate corporations speculating on land in the West. George Washington's career began explicitly as a surveyor for these corporate land interests, and his early life was defined by the corporate structure of land speculation. The Ohio Company. This was a private land speculation corporation formed by wealthy Virginian planters, including Washington's older half-brothers, Lawrence and Augustine. Their specific goal was to secure a grant of 200,000 acres in the Ohio Valley to sell for profit. Washington was sent to the Ohio Valley in 1753, not primarily to defend freedom, but to protect the assets of this private company against the French. The French and Indian War, which sparked the global 7 Years' War, essentially started because a private corporation, the Ohio Company, sent their agent, George Washington, to tell the French to get off the company's property. That wasn't about national security. It was a turf war because the French were squatting on the company's assets. When the king told the colonists they couldn't expand west, making George's real estate portfolio worthless, the founding fathers realized the only way to save their investments was to fire the CEO, King George, and take the company private. It wasn't a revolution. It was a hostile takeover. The Proclamation of 1763. After the war, King George III issued a proclamation forbidding any settlement west of the Appalachian Mountains. This instantly made the assets of the Ohio Company and Washington's personal land claims worthless. They held paper deeds to millions of acres that the Crown now said they couldn't touch. Enter the American Revolution. Hostile takeovers are expensive. You need startup capital. Enter the House of Rothschild. While Washington was fighting the Redcoats, the British king needed troops. He rented 17,000 soldiers from a German prince in Hesse, who managed the money for that prince. Meyer Amschel Rothschild. The massive profits from renting out those Hessian soldiers became the seed money for the banking dynasty that controls the world today. The irony? The global banking system was built on the blood money paid to suppress American independence. They funded the war, managed the debt, and eventually, they bought the winner. The American Revolution was the business deal that made the Rothschilds. They managed the cash flow for the British Hessian side. Confirmed fact. The war created the massive debts in Europe, France, Britain, that allowed the banking families to take control of national treasuries. Without the rental of Hessian soldiers to fight George Washington, Meyer Amschel. Rothschild might have remained a small-time coin dealer. The war was his Series A funding. Most people think the Constitution is a shield. In the framework of Admiralty maritime law, it is actually a corporate charter. The document, it is the Articles of Incorporation for the federal entity, the people. When it says, "we the people," in this legal context, it refers to the founding investors, the aristocracy and elites, not the common inhabitants of the land. The jurisdiction, it grants the government power to regulate commerce, maritime activity. If you claim to be a US citizen, you are claiming to be an employee, asset of that corporation, and thus subject to its human resources department. The Constitution isn't a holy text, it's the company bylaws. These are the cold, hard facts that make the patriots mad. We worship the Constitution like it's a holy scripture that protects the little guy. Read it again. It's not a Bill of Rights for you. It's a business plan for them. It's an admiralty contract. It defines how the corporation, the federal government, will manage its assets, regulate commerce, and secure its debts. When it says, "we the people," did you think they meant you? No. In 1787, people meant shareholders. It meant the landed elite, the masons, and the guys with the wigs and the wooden teeth. It was a contract between the board of directors. You aren't a signatory on that contract, you are the subject of it. It creates a federal zone, a ship at sea. If you step onto that ship by being a US citizen, you follow the captain's rules. The Constitution doesn't protect you from the government. It is the government's permission slip to exist. Words mean things, especially in law. Look at the 1783 Treaty of Peace. This is the document where the king supposedly gave up America. Read the text. It refers to providing for our successors and our posterity. In estate law, posterity doesn't mean you and your kids. It means their bloodline, their heirs. They are the legal successors to the assets. When the Constitution says, "secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity," that was a closed loop. They were securing the assets for the founding investors and their biological heirs. You aren't posterity. You are inhabitants. You are the staff. If you weren't a signatory on the deal, you aren't a beneficiary of the trust. You're just living on the property. The 1783 Esquire connection. Don't forget who signed the 1783 Treaty of Peace. The treaty explicitly calls the American representatives, Adams, Franklin, and Jay, Esquires. Esquire is a title of nobility, below knight. In the British legal system, an esquire is an officer of the crown. Not crown, as in the royal family. This crown is the financial empire. The implication? The king was negotiating with his own esquires. It was an internal restructuring. He wasn't talking to rebels, he was talking to his middle managers. In other words, both sides that signed the treaty were working for the king. Fast forward to 1933. The corporation maxed out its credit cards. The bill came due. So, FDR declared a national emergency and issued Executive Order 6102. The national emergency was actually a declaration of Chapter 11 bankruptcy. He confiscated the gold, but under contract law, you can't take something for nothing. So they passed HJR 192. The deal was, we take your gold and the government agrees to discharge your debts. Did they? No. They kept the gold, kept the collateral, and sent us the bill for the interest. In 1933, the American people stopped being citizens and became collateral. Your birth certificate isn't a record of life. It is a warehouse receipt. Which brings us to today. The Ponzi scheme is wobbling. The debt is mathematical infinity. So, the bankrupt empire looks for assets to seize. Look at Venezuela. The media says it's about democracy. Please, it's a liquidity event. They need the oil to prop up the dying petrodollar. Venezuela has the largest oil fields on the planet, but the world knows the game is rigged. That is why BRICS is happening. They aren't just forming an alliance, they are closing their accounts. They are moving back to gold and commodities because they know the dollar is just a coupon for a store that is going out of business. So, why aren't you told this by all the popular voices on YouTube? Because of the gatekeepers, Alex Jones, Joe Rogan, etc. The system knew you would eventually snap out of your coma, so they built a net to catch you. The alternative mainstream. They give you heroes like Randall Carlson, a 32nd degree Mason. He sits on the biggest podcasts in the world and tells you to look at a comet or worry about the Ice Age. But when asked by Joe Rogan about the Masonic layout of Washington, D.C., he says, "I don't know. I never looked into it." Really? The master of sacred geometry never looked at the giant pentagram in the capital city? That isn't ignorance. That is a non-disclosure agreement. Graham Hancock was on this very same Joe Rogan podcast, the one with Randall Carlson. Now, Hancock is the so-called voice of archaeology, outside the realm of mainstream archaeology. He claims that mankind is around 12,000 years old. At least, this is what I heard him say the last time I listened to him. Things may have changed again. But would it be safe to say that Graham Hancock is very familiar with the Congress of Archaeology? And would it also be safe to say that Hancock should be well read regarding the history of the Congress of Archaeology? Helena Blavatsky published her book in 1888 entitled The Secret Doctrine. She detailed that archaeologists in Europe discovered the bones of Homo sapiens in strata dated to the Miocene era. What is the Miocene era? Well, that is from 2 million to 20 million years ago. Not only were they discovered by European archaeologists, but their findings were also presented to the Congress of Archaeology in the 1800s. They were found to be genuine and entered as evidence that mankind walked this planet millions of years ago. Hancock is mute on this, just as Carlson is mum as to the Masonic geometric overlay on the District of Columbia. And the ultimate irony? These gurus sign contracts with Google to sell you ads. They trade their truths for Federal Reserve notes, the currency that Masons, elitists, and royal bloodlines use for the very slavery they all complain about. David Icke. Where would David Icke be today without the Matrix being there to build his own financial empire? They monetize the distraction because it keeps you busy. They hide the reality because it would set you free. But there is a darker realm to all of this. I will present a deeper, darker, more esoteric side of an agenda that relates to our very near future. The deep state. Nothing deep about it. It's in plain sight.